Hello everybody, this is Brooke, aka Supernatural Simmer 34, and today we are back at it with another speed build. This speed build is another Victorian home in Strangerville, and I actually really like this one. It pretty much fits my taller than it is wide ideal, even though it's still only 2 stories. But it's a 3-bedroom house with, I'm pretty sure, 2 baths. It fits everything your sim will need, and it can fit a 5-sim family, even though the family that actually lives in this house is only a 4-sim family. The reason for that is that one of my sims is a toddler, and I wanted to include a bed for when he ages up. Speaking of beds, I think I'll talk about the bunk beds, which I know is probably old news by now, but I pre-record all of my videos, so I'm usually pretty late on things like that. But I actually don't really like the bunk beds. There are 2 variants, and you can mix and match each variant with other single beds, so that's nice. But there are a couple of things that bother me about the bunk beds. One example is that the more basic bunk bed with the wood is uncomfortable. Like, it gives your sim the uncomfortable moodlet when sleeping on it, and that's pretty annoying when it's only one of 2 variants, and in my opinion, the better looking variant. But another issue I have is that they recycled beds from the base game in Parenthood. Don't think we didn't notice that, EA, but they recycled beds instead of creating a new bed. I think I've heard some people say that they're glad they just recycled beds, but I think that's a little bit naive, because one of those beds is something people have had to pay for, and I, for one, am tired of the Sims team making things from packs base game. But another issue I have with bunk beds, my 3rd out of 4, is that the metal bunk bed doesn't mix and match very well with other beds, or mix and match well at all. So you basically just have to use it with that bed. That's not that annoying, but the next issue of mine is the biggest one. The Sims team released another unfinished product. They said in the patch notes that this is the first iteration of bunk beds and that they will be adding more lofting qualities, which is irritating because I could have waited a little longer for them in order for them to be completely functional. I don't know, maybe it's not that big of a deal, but I feel like you should only ever release finished products. But that's honestly something that, as far as I'm aware, hasn't happened since The Sims 3 days. But the house is coming together, and you'll notice that it's pretty red, which isn't really something I carried too much over into the inside. I went for some redder wood tones, but this house actually ended up being very neutral with some blues, and then the bedrooms are obviously suited towards the Sims' taste. But this house was actually built for a family I created. Now, if you remember James Conan, the tattoo artist, create a sim from, I think, last week, then you might remember that James is married to Marilyn's co-worker Shingo. Well, they have 2 children together, York and Brooklyn. Now, before I get any jabs about naming my sim after myself, just know that I was going for a theme. You see, I want one of Marilyn's kids to marry York when he's older, so I had to give him a Y name, so I named him York because it was one of the only good Y names to pop up. I'm really going to struggle with naming the heir's love interests, though, since there are 8 of them. But then I was trying to come up with a name for his sister, and I was thinking about the idea of York and like around that idea, and that until I was like New York. So then I wanted to find names from the bigger cities and stuff in New York, and I was trying so hard to avoid the name Brooklyn, but it was the only one I could think of. So here we have Brooklyn, a very blonde young artist, because she ended up being the one who takes after Shingo. And I'm sorry if you can hear the birds in the background of my voiceover, but my window is open again, and I live in the middle of the woods. Soon enough, you might hear the frogs scream, but I'm hoping my mic is good enough at canceling out background noise that it'll only be a faint croak, because it's not the best sound in the world. It's getting to be really nice where I am, our so-called first spring, but then it's supposed to get kind of cold again by the end of the week. I'm hoping, however, that spring, or at least the rainy season, will have started before April comes around, but I know that that's not a very high probability. The Midwest really doesn't enjoy having consistent weather. But there is one thing that I should mention before I forget. The stair glitch is still around, so you will have to make sure that the stairs are not in their own separate room when you download this house. I really hate the look that the configurable stairs have when you don't delete the floor, though. They really need to fix that because so many people use that feature that it's ridiculous for it to stay broken for as long as it has. It's been broken since Snowy Escape, for heaven's sake, and that was in November, so 4.5 months without a fix. And speaking of fixes, they just got around to fixing the glitch for console players with the skin tones, and it's been about 3 months since that patch came out, but at least they had a flood of people contacting them about that glitch, myself included, whereas this glitch seems to be completely ignored. I've only seen one person talk about it, and that's Simlessy, and even then I think she only mentioned it a couple of times when the glitch first came out. But also about the live stream or whatever that happened yesterday, or actually the 23rd, because for y'all it wasn't yesterday, but the day of the last patch, they did a live stream that kind of leaked another trait slot, as well as more hair colors, and I am beyond excited. If you've seen my Snowy Escape trailer reaction, I thought we were getting more hair colors then, and I got super excited, but it ended up being a little bit of a letdown because it was just more of that thing they do where they have a hair but then they have another version with tips or streaks, it was a little bit sad, and I was like a little tempted to delete the video, like the trailer reaction, just because I thought it was really embarrassing how excited I got over that. But yeah, we're probably getting more hair colors, including, I think, a light brown, a dark blonde, and a true black. I'm personally more excited about the light brown and dark blonde, but I can understand the appeal of having a true black too, especially when you have a sim with really dark skin and the hair kind of looks a little ashy against the darkness and richness of their skin tone. But I'm sorry that this part of the video is so stop and go, but I had 3 options, which were delete the entire section, take out the many 2-second pauses, or just leave it be, and I didn't want to cut it out just because I hate cutting anything out of my videos, but I didn't take out every 2-second pause because I have very little patience, so I would have just gotten annoyed and been put into like kind of a slump. So instead I decided I was just going to leave it in. But does anyone really like watch speed builds too closely? Like I've always kind of just used them as background noise the majority of the time. But this house has a pool just like all of the houses in the neighborhood will, just because I feel like if you're middle class and you live in the desert, you would definitely want a pool. And the landscaping is pretty simple. I use these plants from the Romantic Garden Stuff Pack just because they come in a lot of good not so berry colors. And a lot of good colors in general, but the backyard ended up being a little bit small, so here in a moment I think I end up expanding it a bit more so that I can fit a swing set, just because I feel like kids should always have something to do outdoors, and that's the most common item for them to have. I honestly don't know how we got monkey bars before we got swings, and I'm really confused as to how we got monkey bars before slides, because we still don't have those. With all of the speculation that the next pack is going to be Generations, with some actual evidence this time, then hopefully we'll finally get slides. I'm kind of scared of a Generations pack though, because from what I know, expansion packs in The Sims 4 don't have nearly as much content in them as they did in previous iterations of the game. So I'm a little bit nervous that Generations won't have much. I think that if or when they do Generations, a baby update will come with it though, and even though I'll probably never play with babies, I'd be really happy if we got it because I know a lot of people would be really excited. But here I actually lit up the house and placed down wallpaper, and I think it looks really cute. I've never really used that wood color before, and I know that I've never used that wood flooring before, so I was really excited to use it for the first time. But I placed down the counters and cabinets in the kitchen, and I, again, kind of went for a more red wood tone. But I was kind of stuck on the furnishing, so after placing down the counters and cabinets, I took a bit of a break from building this house before coming back and doing the landscaping on the front. It's pretty much exactly like the landscaping in the back, and I honestly always get stuck at the parts in the voiceover where I have to talk about landscaping because there's not really much that you can say. Like I've said something good about those, I think either base game or outdoor retreat flowers about a million times just because they are and probably always will be my favorite plant in the game. I also use these desert plants that we got from base game, and I really love those because they always add such a nice pop of color to the landscaping. But I pretty much surround the entire house in bushes just because I thought it looked nice. I kind of do that a lot because I feel like in real life, it might keep weirdos from just wandering into your yard and jumping into your pool, which is something I've heard happens, which is freaking gross. Like, you don't know where that person's been. They could have had a sandwich in their pocket that is now dissolving in your pool, which is absolutely disgusting. But here is where I expand the backyard to fit the swing set. I had to push all of those plants back by a tile, which is a really annoying thing to have to do, just because it takes forever. Like, that's at least 30 plants right there, but the video is sped up, so it doesn't seem like it takes that long to you guys. There's this thing I've realized, though, and it's that your hand will never seem so shaky, or as shaky when the video is sped up. Like, if I ever have to do a straight line with terrain paint on YouTube, just know that my hand is quivering while I do that, because I have anxiety and ADHD, so I am constantly shaking for no goddamn reason. But we're pretty much done with the entire exterior, so here we move on to the interior, which is always my favorite part of the build, just because I really like furnishing and I really like mixing a bunch of colors together to create a very cohesive color scheme. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at it too, but I could be wrong. But it took me a little while to put together the upstairs floor plan because I didn't want the walls to be too close to the railings on the stairs. I feel like that would be kind of annoying in real life because you want to have enough space to comfortably walk around. But I also took a little while to choose out the right wallpaper for the bedrooms because I wanted it to fit with the rest of the house, but I also wanted to get a little bit of purple in there for Shingo. And of course, I also wanted the kids' rooms to suit their personalities, even though I think at this point I hadn't made the kids yet. Or maybe I did, because otherwise I wouldn't have made it a 3-bedroom home because I was originally only planning on them having 1 kid, so I suppose I had made the family by now. I don't know, but here we're on to the kitchen, which is pretty simple. I used the new kitchen stuff, like the fridge and the stove, not the counters and cabinets, from the Country Kitchen kit, and if you don't have that kit, it would probably be pretty simple to just replace the items, because I know a lot of people are opting to not buy them, which, by the way, that's completely understandable. I know a lot of people think that the kits aren't worth the money in the first place, and the exchange rates not being consistent is just a scam, plain and simple, so I understand not wanting to buy them. But we're just about done with the kitchen, which I've been doing this thing in my kitchens in these Victorian homes where the kitchen has like a separate area from the main stove and sink and all that, and I think it looks really nice. I just wonder why I've only been doing it to Victorian homes. And you know, because it's always been something I did to Victorian homes. Like, is there something inherently Victorian about that? I don't think so, and even if there was, I'd have no way of knowing because I don't look up furniture or furnishing reference pics. I just kind of wing that part. But now we've moved on to the living room, and for all the red that's on the outside of this house, it does not carry over to the inside for the most part, so the living room ends up pretty blue. It was also an awkward shape because the window seat was going to be blocked off if I put 2 3-tile couches, so instead I used chairs, and it looks a little off balance to me, but I still really end up liking the living room. Actually, I just really like the entire house. It's really nice, and I think I did a good job on it. And apparently I did manage to squeeze in 2 3-tile couches. I completely forgot about that one somehow, but I still think it looks really nice. But here we move on to the hallways in just a second, and they're really small, so I didn't spend too much time decorating them. I think I spent the most time on the entryway, and even then it didn't require too much of my time. Out of the hallways, of course. I did not spend the most time on the entryway overall. But I did fit a closet in the entryway, and that's something I really like to do just because it's really realistic, because you would want somewhere to hang up your coat when you come inside. But I think other than that, I just add a plant, maybe a painting to the entryway, and then we move onto the dining room. Actually, no, it was a bookshelf. I stand corrected. Well, that's even better because it's functional. But here we start the dining room, which is pretty simple and maybe a little bit cramped. I'm like 95% sure it's functional. I actually removed the chairs on the ends of the table because I was worried about it not being functional, so you should have no issue. I added another fireplace in this room as well because I feel like a Victorian home would just have so many of those because they didn't have central heating systems yet, of course. I mean, I suppose some people might have uninstalled the fireplaces somehow, but come on, if you're going to live in a Victorian home, you have to have the Victorian vibes, and that includes a fireplace. But next we move on to the bathrooms, of which there are 2, and they're both pretty big, so no half baths in this house. They don't take too long to decorate, but I am one of those people who doesn't really like bathrooms too much. All of my bathrooms tend to look the same, and I'm not really looking to experiment. The downstairs bathroom was originally going to be an office though, but then I figured that having a bathroom on the first story was pretty important. Just because maybe you wouldn't want your guests to go up where your bedrooms are to use the bathroom. This might just be me, but I've read way too many stories where a robber or whatever, even just somebody snooping, are directed to the bathroom upstairs and then they go to the bedrooms. I would personally walk an unknown guest to my bathroom because I am so freaking paranoid. I do include a desk in this house despite my exclusion of an office, but your Sims may not be able to walk past that desk. I really feel like they'd be able to, but sometimes The Sims is really weird with routing and needing adequate space to do things. It kind of took me forever to decorate this desk just because I had to use move objects for the placement of the decorations and for the placement of the desk, and that involves a lot of guesswork. Of course, it doesn't really look like it took long to you guys, but keep in mind that this is sped up 6 times, so if it takes like 20 seconds to do it here, I spent several minutes decorating that one desk in real time, which that still doesn't really sound that long, but I'm kind of impatient. But here we move on to the master bedroom, which I decorated with a purple theme because I really wanted Shingo to have representation, because in case you forgot, this house is for 2 of my Sims in the Not So Berry challenge, and their children. And speaking of Not So Berry, I used to think that those episodes were so much easier to edit than to do a voiceover on a speed build, but that's just not true anymore. So if you notice that I'm not very good about getting Not So Berry out, it's just because I haven't wanted to sit down and edit a 3-hour video into a 20-minute one. I've been trying to find a happy medium for how long I should stream on Twitch in order to get a good episode length, but I haven't found that medium yet. Can y'all tell me, would you prefer longer episodes that come out less often, like the 20-minute ones, or shorter episodes that usually wind up about 10 minutes but they come out once or twice a week? Please let me know which you'd prefer in the comments. It'd be really helpful for me to know. But here we move on to the kids' rooms, and we start with Brooklyn's room, which, by the way, I hate saying her name, because my name is Brooke, and then Lynn as in my first and middle name, so Brooklyn as a name is really weird to me, especially considering, in my opinion, they're spelling it wrong. They took out the E in Brooke, and they took out one of the N's in Lynn. But, oh, I actually have a story for you guys, and I know I haven't told a story in a while, but I met my first Karen. So I was biking on a sidewalk and I was coming up to this older woman. I slowed down practically to walking speed and I kind of waited for her to step a couple steps to the side so that I could pass, because she was one very small person standing in the middle of the sidewalk and practically taking up the entire thing. And she says to me in the snootiest voice you can imagine, "Pedestrians have the right of way, get in the road." And like, yeah, obviously, pedestrians do have the right of way. I'm not contesting that. But cars are always going to be able to cause me more bodily harm than I can cause her on my bike. So I tend to stay on the sidewalk. And another thing, people who drive cars are so aggressive to people on bikes, and that's another reason I try to stay out of the road. So I got off my bike and waited for my friend to catch up, trying not to laugh because she was being ridiculous. I wasn't being aggressive. I didn't even talk to her. I wasn't even pedaling my bike. I was going that slow, and she felt so threatened by me. And another aside, I ride a bike that is the right size for a child. My bike is small, and at the speed I was going, I probably would have stopped before I even bumped into her. So the fact that she felt so threatened to me is kind of funny to me. But then my friend and I kind of stood there watching her go until we couldn't, like, see her super well anymore. But then we biked to the end of the road to an intersection on one of the busiest roads in my town, and we saw her walking on the sidewalk on the other side of the street. A crosswalk nowhere in sight. So in my brain, I imagined her, like, jaywalking, and she accidentally gets hit by a car, and she says, "Pedestrians have the right of way," and because they do have the right of way in those situations. And then she's trying to sue the person who hit her. Anyway, I found that funny. You might not, but yeah, that was my first Karen. I actually intended for that story to take longer than it did to tell, so I don't have anything to talk about, but since we're almost done with the screenshots, I think I'll just do my outro now. But we are coming up on the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and I will see you all soon.